It had only been 2 hours since my wedding when I saw my wife applying oil to her navel. Every night, she would do this before coming to me. Why would she do that? And then, just 3 days later, I had to divorce her. The reason behind it will leave you shocked, but before I share that, I want to know if you enjoyed our previous video. If you did, leave a yes in the comments and subscribe to our channel. You'll find plenty of wisdom here. Divorce, this one word, might be the most bitter term in the world. It completely upends the lives of two people and often leaves a woman utterly shattered. In the eyes of God, it is one of the most disliked actions and is permissible in our religion only under very valid circumstances. Yet these days, this word has become so common that it seems to appear in every other person's story. Today's story is about a husband and wife who, just 3 days after their wedding, were separated forever because of this very word. But why? What was the reason behind their divorce? When you learn the truth, it might leave you stunned. My friend's story is one you must listen to until the end, as it might stop countless people from making poor decisions in their own lives. My name is Munawar. I'm 45 years old and have spent my life fulfilling my family responsibilities. But I never married. I was yearning for a partner. Living so many years alone as a man, especially in a large empty house without a woman, is incredibly difficult. Only a man whose marriage has been delayed can truly understand what I mean. Finally, I told my elder sisters that I had taken care of my duties, and now they should find me a bride. Yet I felt as though my sisters weren't really interested in arranging my marriage. Even after much insistence, they started looking at prospective brides, only to reject every single one. They always found some flaw or other. It was as if they didn't want me to marry at all. One day, while returning from the office, I noticed a young, beautiful girl. She was a complete stranger to me, but I felt so drawn to her that I stopped and asked if something was wrong. She looked troubled, glancing around nervously as if she needed help. That's why I stopped. She explained that she had just been robbed, her phone and purse snatched, and now she didn't even have money to get home. Tears welled up in her eyes. Seeing this, I quickly took out some cash, handed it to her, and told her not to worry. She hesitated, embarrassed, but took the money and said, "I'll return it to you tomorrow, at the same place." It was just a few hundred rupees, and I didn't need the money back. However, I wanted an excuse to see her again, so I said, "Sure, I'll meet you here tomorrow." I hoped she would come back, and she did. The next day, she stood there at the bus stop smiling. She thanked me and returned the money. We talked for a while, and I learned that she lived in the same neighborhood as me. That was enough for me to take the next step. I asked for her address and sent my sisters there to meet her family. When they returned, they criticized everything. "Those people aren't good," they said. "The girl works, and working girls are often very cunning. They aren't fit for marriage." But by that point, I no longer cared about my sisters' opinions. I had realized that if I relied on them, they would never let me get married. It seemed like they never wanted me to have a life partner or settle down. When my sisters saw my determination, they reluctantly agreed to my match with the girl. Surprisingly, she was a bit younger than me, but her family did not object. Her name was Noreen, and a few months later, she became my bride and moved into my home. I was overjoyed to have Noreen in my life. That wedding night, which I had dreamed of for so long, finally came. My sisters weren't particularly thrilled, but they joined in the celebrations nonetheless. I spent much of the evening with my friends, who teased me relentlessly. They all were already fathers of 2 children each, and I, the bachelor at this age, was finally getting married. They ribbed me about it until I finally managed to send them off and headed to my room. When I entered, I was surprised to find that Noreen wasn't waiting for me in her bridal dress. She had already changed into a simple black shalwar kameez. I asked, surprised, "Noreen, you changed your clothes?" She replied, "I'm not used to heavy outfits, so I didn't wait in them." She looked a bit embarrassed and added, "I hope you're not upset." I quickly shook my head. "No, it's fine," I said. "I was delayed by my friends, so it's my fault." I gave her a gift as per the tradition, then freshened up myself. By the time I lay down beside her, my emotions were running high. I moved closer to her, ready to let my feelings flow. But then I felt something wet near her navel. I touched it, and my fingers came away coated in oil. Startled, I asked, "What's this?" She smiled and told me something that completely caught me off guard. I stared at her in disbelief as she explained, "It's necessary for a better future for both of us." She then asked me to do something so surprising that I hesitated, but she was my new bride, and I didn't want to upset her. So I went against my instincts and agreed. That first night I did as she requested, but the next morning it weighed heavily on me. I felt burdened, my emotions left unfulfilled. I couldn't understand the purpose behind what she had done. I was completely puzzled. When my sisters saw me that morning, they asked, "What's wrong? You seemed so happy yesterday when you brought your bride home. Why do you look so down now?" For a moment, I considered telling my eldest sister what had happened the night before. But then I felt ashamed. How could I discuss such a private matter? This was something that should remain within the four walls of my marriage. I didn't want to know what my sister might think, so I simply said, "I'm just tired. A little sleep and I'll be fine." My sister smiled while Noreen had already left for her family's home. After she left, I tried to rest, but I couldn't stop wondering why she had done what she did. That evening, at my sister's insistence, I went to bring her back from her family's home. Her mother greeted me warmly, but Noreen seemed unusually quiet. When she saw me, she sat down beside me. When I asked her to come back home, she reluctantly agreed, as if it was a huge burden. Once we returned home, she locked herself in our room, while I sat with my sisters for a while. I didn't want to give them a chance to complain. They were only staying for a few days, just until the walima ceremony was over. After that, they'd return to their homes and would only visit once in a while. I hoped that Noreen would spend some time with them too, but I couldn't figure out what was going on with her. After spending some time with my sisters, I went back to my room and found Noreen talking with my younger sister. They were chatting away. When I entered, my sister immediately stood up and started to leave. I gently stopped her, saying, "There's no need to go. Stay and keep talking to your sister-in-law. I don't mind." She smiled and replied, "I was just here to keep her company since she was sitting alone." With that, she left the room. I sat beside Noreen, took her hand and said lovingly, "It would be nice if you spent some time with my sisters." But Noreen just gave me an odd look and then got up, saying she needed to freshen up. When she returned, she was once again dressed in that simple black outfit. For some reason, seeing her in black made me feel uneasy. The next day, she wore the same plain black shalwar kameez again. Right in front of me, she poured oil into her navel and applied it generously. Then she lay down on the bed and once again asked me to do what she had requested the previous night. Feeling troubled, I asked her, "What's going on, Noreen? Why are you doing this?" She simply replied, "It's for our better future. That's all I can say. I just need you to trust me and support me." Reluctantly, I gave in to her wishes again. Not long after, exhausted and confused, I fell asleep. But deep down, I was far from content. The next morning, I felt heavy-hearted and restless. My elder sister called me over and said, "Munawar, something's not right. You seem different. Yesterday you were so quiet. Are you unhappy with your wife?" I stayed silent at first, unsure of how to respond. She continued, "The walima is done and we'll be heading back to our home soon. If there's something bothering you, tell me now. I'm your elder sister. I can help." Reluctantly, I told her about Noreen's behavior. My sister was taken aback and exclaimed, "This isn't right. Something's not adding up." She suggested a few steps to take, and when I followed her advice, I discovered something that left me stunned. My sister was right. Noreen wasn't the right match for me. I had made a hasty decision marrying her, and now I was regretting it. I spent the entire day in turmoil. After my sisters left, I went back to the room and found my wife once again applying oil to her navel. When she asked me to do the same thing again, I lost my temper. I said something I shouldn't have, telling her to pack her belongings and leave right away. She stood there in shock after hearing my words, her eyes wide as if she couldn't comprehend what I was saying. "Why are you saying this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "How can you treat me like this? So unfairly, so cruelly?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady the anger and frustration that had been building up inside me. "What do you expect, Noreen?" I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "What do you think respectable women do? I thought for the first 2 nights that maybe it was just something temporary. Maybe it was something you'd stop once you settled in. But what I saw today, I can't ignore it. I can't pretend it didn't happen. If I stay with you any longer, my entire life will be ruined. Her face crumpled as tears began streaming down her cheeks. What fault of mine is there in any of this? She pleaded. I only did what I thought was best for us, for our future, for the life we're building together. But her words only stirred the emotions I was trying to suppress. I leaned forward, my voice lower, but no less firm. Do you really believe that? I asked. Every night you do these strange rituals, oiling your navel, lighting candles in every corner of the room. You sit there calmly, as if nothing is unusual, and then you fall asleep. I stay awake, waiting for those candles to burn out, exhausted and drained, all while wondering what on earth is happening in this house. How long do you think this can continue? Noreen's tears continued, but she didn't say anything. I pressed on. I kept quiet for 2 days. I told myself there must be a reason. I thought maybe it's something important, something you'd eventually explain. But today, when I went into the storage room, I saw things I never thought I'd find. I saw dolls stuffed with needles. I saw objects hidden away that no one would keep unless they were up to something dark. It was all the proof I needed. And now I know why I felt so drawn to you from the very beginning. It wasn't love, Noreen. It wasn't fate. It was something else, something unnatural. She shook her head, her voice a whisper now. Munawar, you're misunderstanding this. I didn't do any of those things. It's not what you think. But I couldn't hear her anymore. The trust I'd placed in her had already shattered. I've had enough, I said, my voice hard. Pack your things and leave. I can't do this anymore. She looked at me, her expression a mixture of disbelief and heartbreak. For a moment, I almost second-guessed myself, but the anger and confusion clouding my mind wouldn't let me soften. I pointed to the door, and after a moment's hesitation, she started gathering her belongings. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't say anything more. She quietly walked out, leaving me standing there alone in the house that, just days ago, I thought would be filled with joy and love. As the door shut behind her, I sat down, my head in my hands. I had married her against my sister's advice, against my own doubts, because I thought I knew better. I thought I had found love, that she was the partner I'd been waiting for all these years. But now, just a few nights into our marriage, I felt like a fool. I couldn't believe how quickly things had unraveled. Those first few nights, I had tried to overlook her strange behavior. I told myself it was just her way of settling in. After all, everyone has their little quirks, right? But then I started noticing the patterns. Every evening, she would apply oil to her navel. Then she'd hand me what was left and ask me to pour it into small candles scattered around the room. Once the candles were lit, she would lie down and go to sleep, leaving me to sit there and wait for them to burn out. At first, I thought it was just a peculiar habit, something she would stop after she got comfortable. But instead of stopping, it became a nightly routine. My elder sister had always warned me about women who practice black magic. They do strange things, she once said. You'll see the signs, unusual rituals, objects hidden in the house. Don't ignore it if you notice something off. I had brushed off her words at the time. I loved Noreen. I wanted to believe in her goodness, her sincerity. But after I started finding strange items in the house, those dolls with needles, that odd collection of trinkets in the storage room, I couldn't deny it any longer. The night I confronted her, I finally understood what my sister had been trying to tell me. And when I asked her about the items, about the candles, about the oil, she couldn't give me a straight answer. That was when I decided I couldn't continue living like this. I made her leave that night, and in my frustration, I gave her a single divorce. After she left, I felt hollow. I stayed home for 2 days, unable to face the outside world. I didn't go to work. I didn't answer my phone. I just sat in the house thinking about everything that had happened. I had been so sure that marrying Noreen was the right decision. I had defied my sister's objections, convinced that love would conquer all. And yet here I was, alone and overwhelmed by the weight of what had happened. On the third day, my friends came to visit. They had been worried when I stopped answering their calls. Seeing my state, they sat me down and asked what was going on. Hesitantly, I told them the whole story. They listened in silence, and when I finished, they looked at each other, then back at me. Munawar, one of them said, do you really think she was practicing black magic? Are you sure you didn't misunderstand something? Another friend chimed in. You've been under a lot of stress. Maybe there's another explanation. Maybe she was following some old family tradition or doing something for good luck. You threw her out before giving her a chance to explain. Are you absolutely certain she meant harm? Their words made me pause. Had I been too quick to judge? Was there another side to the story I hadn't considered? In the heat of the moment, I hadn't given her a chance to fully explain. I had assumed the worst, and now, sitting here with my friends, I began to wonder if I had made a mistake. I looked at them and admitted, I don't know. I don't know what to believe anymore. They encouraged me to take some time to think things through, to consider whether I might have been wrong. I nodded, but inside, I still felt uncertain. Had I been too hasty? Or had I done the right thing? Only time would tell. Hearing my sister's words, I was frozen in place. I could hardly believe what I was hearing. Appa was telling my other two sisters, I've set things up so perfectly that the snake will die and the stick won't break. That cursed Noreen can swear her innocence all she wants, but Munawar will never believe her. I've trapped her so well that she's already fallen in his eyes. And anyway, our brother is old now. He can't endure his wife's aloofness for more than a few days. When his emotions get the better of him and he wants her close, and she keeps pushing him away, he'll throw her out on his own. Another sister chimed in. Appa, you've outdone yourself. You told Noreen there were effects on Munawar and convinced her that this was the only way to treat them. Meanwhile, you're the one who placed those dolls with needles in the storeroom. She has no idea about any of it. Appa laughed. Exactly. I told her Munawar was under a spell and that only she could cure him. I even gave her that oil and said it had been blessed by a spiritual elder. I made her believe that using it would help break the spell. I knew she would start all those strange rituals and that Munawar wouldn't understand what was going on. And once he felt pushed away, I knew it was just a matter of time before he threw her out. Appa's voice dropped slightly, but her tone was still triumphant. We all know Munawar can't handle being ignored by his wife. He's been desperate to marry for years. Once he feels neglected, he'll react exactly the way we want. He'll kick her out, and then we'll have no one else trying to claim our share. Munawar has a government job. When he retires, he'll get a lot of money. And of course, there's our father's large house. That belongs to all of us, not just him. But if he has children, he'll start worrying about their future, and we'll lose our rightful share. That's why I'll never let him settle down. It's better this way. Appa's words were followed by a loud, mocking laugh, so loud that I felt like my ears were going to burst. My heart sank as the realization hit me. My own sisters, whom I had trusted, had deliberately sabotaged my marriage to protect their own interests. They had lied, manipulated Noreen, and planted evidence to make me believe she was involved in black magic. I turned and walked away without letting them see me. The betrayal weighed heavy on my chest, but I knew I had to make things right. I went straight to Noreen's family home. When her mother opened the door and saw me, her eyes filled with tears. She said, "What wrong did my daughter do that you treated her so harshly?" I asked to speak with Noreen. Her mother hesitated. "But you divorced her," she said. "What is there left to say?" "I only gave one divorce," I explained. "We still have the option of reconciliation. I need to clear up some misunderstandings." She reluctantly called Noreen. When Noreen sat in front of me, she looked weary and defeated. I could see she had been through so much pain. As we began talking, the truth started to come out. She told me how Appa had approached her shortly after the wedding. Appa claimed that I was under some kind of negative influence and that only Noreen, as my wife, could help me. Appa gave her the oil, saying it had been specially blessed by a religious elder, and told her that using it in her navel and lighting candles would help cure me. Noreen, believing Appa's words and wanting the best for me, had followed the instructions without question. She thought she was helping me. She thought she was protecting our future. All those strange rituals, those moments that had confused and frustrated me, were done with good intentions. She had no idea that Appa had planted the evidence in the storeroom or that the whole story about effects was a lie. Noreen had done everything in good faith, and I had been blind to it. As I sat there listening, my heart ached. She had been nothing but sincere. I had been deceived by my own sister, the person I had trusted the most. Now I knew the truth. Noreen was innocent, and the real betrayal had come from within my own family. Noreen explained that she used to work, and because of that, marriage proposals were rare. When your proposal came, not only was my family thrilled, but I was overjoyed as well. I saw you as a kind and compassionate man. You had helped me on the street without even knowing me. That's why I agreed to marry you. But I had no idea that your sisters would try to ruin our newly built life together. When I asked Noreen for forgiveness and suggested we reconcile, she immediately agreed because she had come to love me too. I took her hand and brought her back home, clearing out every unpleasant thing from our house. 2 days later, my sisters came to visit, curious to see how things were between us. When they found me happy with Noreen, they were stunned. I told them that I would sell the house soon, give them their shares, and move into a smaller home with Noreen. I didn't let them know that I had discovered their truth. After all, they were still my sisters, and I wanted to maintain our relationship. My sisters were taken aback that things had settled between me and Noreen. Noreen, understanding not to fall for my sisters' schemes again, hosted them politely before sending them off. She showed great generosity by not holding a grudge and forgiving them for their actions. I've listed my house for sale and will soon sell it, giving each sister her rightful share. This way, there's no reason for them to try anything against me and my wife again. What do you all think? Was I wrong to hastily give my wife one divorce? Should I have been more cautious and not listen to my sisters? In today's world, do siblings really go to such lengths over property disputes? Should I have sold the house from the start and given them their shares to prevent all this from happening? I'm eager to hear your thoughts.